to the place in the middle of the sun. And we'll sing this song, sing it one by one.
What's going on, guys? Thanks so much for tuning in to today's show. Today, I talk with Vikki Stark, and Vikki is a woman with a mission. She's devoted to helping people learn how to take the difficulties life throws their way and turn them into opportunities for growth. She's a psychotherapist, author, blogger, and speaker, and has been doing that for more than 30 years. And today, Vikki and I talk about her book and her work around her book. And her book is called Runaway Husbands. And she'll tell you what a runaway husband is. And basically, it's someone who has up and run away in a seemingly happy marriage. And it actually happened to her. And that's what prompted her to build a community of support and tools and write a book about it. And if you're listening and you've been affected by this, certainly going to be valuable. And I think it's also valuable if you've gone through a breakup, going through a breakup, or divorce. A lot of great stuff in today's conversation. And I say it in the show, I'll say it here at the top. You're not alone. I know it is incredibly painful to lose a relationship, no matter how you lose it. And certainly if you're in a happy one and suddenly ends, that is going to be incredibly difficult, but you're not alone. And Vikki will tell you all about how you can join her community. And I think you'll find a lot of value in today's conversation. As always, thank you guys so much for tuning in, for leaving those 5-star reviews on iTunes. You know, I try really hard to give you guys great content, and this is not my full-time job. It's actually my part-time job. I guess now is a good opportunity. I could tell you I run a surf retreat here in Costa Rica, and I'm also proud dad to Stella, as Sarah is a proud mom to her. And Sarah and I started this podcast 7-8 years ago just to get free relationship advice and share it with people. And here we are approaching 400 episodes. And I'm just really thankful to get this information right alongside you, try to improve my life, improve my relationships. So yeah, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Enjoy today's show. Hi, Vikki. Thanks so much for joining me on the show today.
Very happy to be here, Chase.
Today, we're going to talk about your book, Runaway Husbands, and all the work that you do around it. I think it's super important and really beautiful what you're doing. And I thought a good place for us to start would be having you tell us what prompted you to write the book. And we'll talk about what a runaway husband is, and we will share some super valuable information with our listeners.
That sounds wonderful. And I'm so happy to have the opportunity to talk about this topic with your listeners, because a lot of women who are in this situation don't know about it and are really struggling and suffering and having a really hard time, feeling like they're the only person in the world to whom this had happened. And so I'm always happy to be able to get the word out. How it started, how this whole amazing journey started for me. I had been a psychotherapist and a marriage counselor for 25 years and had been in what I thought was an extremely secure, very happy marriage with my husband. We'd been married for 21 years. And I thought things were, pretty good, not perfect, but pretty good. And I had written a book, my first book, which was about sister relationships. And I'd been on a book tour. I'd been on the road all across America for 21 days. And when I arrived home, I flew back. I live in Montreal, and I flew back from the West Coast. And he picked me up at the airport and drove me home. And then he rushed off to work, which I thought I had taken the red eye back. So I arrived in the morning, and it sounded a little odd that he was going to work. Usually he would want to stop and have a coffee and talk about what was going on and welcome me home. Anyhow, he went off to work, and I spent the day sort of putting around the house, and I took a shower, and I noticed this long, dark hair in the bathtub. But being a very naive or trusting wife, I thought nothing of it. I figured maybe it fell off his clothes or something. And then when he got home that night, he said to me, I said to him, I bought fish. And he said, it's over. And I said, okay, you don't want fish? I'll make chicken. And he said, no, it's over. The marriage is over, and I'm moving out right now. So that was the start of a very painful, tumultuous period in my life. And he did move out and moved directly in with his girlfriend. And I subsequently learned that he'd been having an affair for 6 years. So that's really the sort of the genesis of how the whole Runaway Husbands project began. I had already written one book. And I was a marriage counselor. I knew the marriage was over. He had moved in with his girlfriend. And I started researching sudden wife abandonment and learned that there was really nothing written about it. And the more I was researching it, the more I was hearing from other women whose husbands had left in similar ways out of the blue from what they thought was a happy marriage. And then subsequently, I did a research project, and I had 400 women participating from throughout the world, and I got the basic material to write Runaway Husbands. So that's sort of the beginning of the whole story. And then, so that was a number of years ago. The book came out in 2010. And since then, we've developed a worldwide community of women helping each other through all sorts of ways, and getting people back on the road to recovery, because it's quite a traumatic event.
Thank you for sharing your very personal story, Vikki. And I think that is in itself so important and valuable for people out there to know. Obviously, you've written a book, you've built this community, but you're going to reach a lot of listeners with this, and that they're not alone, and that their experience is not unique, and it's got to be incredibly painful. So why don't we start now by having you tell our listeners how to deal with that grief? How did you deal with it, and how are you teaching people to deal with that initial shock and grief and sadness and pain?
Yeah. Well, the thing that's important for people to understand is that, a lot of people say, well, what is it, 45% of marriages end in divorce. But this kind of ending to a marriage, which I've come to call wife abandonment syndrome, is different from a typical divorce. In a typical divorce, the wife knows that there's a problem. They may have been going to marriage counseling. He may have told her, I'm really unhappy. She may have known if there was another woman involved. And so she had the opportunity to try to work on the marriage, to try to retrieve things, to try to improve things. And it didn't come so suddenly. But this type of ending typically comes quite suddenly. Even if he doesn't move out immediately, he sort of unilaterally makes the decision. So there's this element of trauma in it. And so that the women who experience this, like myself, go through like an actual traumatic experience. Many of them, like me, lost 30 pounds. I lost 30 pounds. It's not unusual for women to lose 20, 30 pounds. And not sleeping, they're obsessing, they're deeply, deeply struggling. And so, but then after 6 or 8 months, friends and family, start to say, hey, it's time to pull it together. You're not the first person to get divorced. Why are you still in such bad shape? And even a therapist don't really understand the traumatic nature of wife abandonment syndrome. And then they, and often, women tell me that their therapists are asking them about their childhood abandonment issues or that kind of thing, which, perhaps plays a role, but is really not the fundamental thing. It's the fact that it's as if you'd been in an automobile accident and you didn't see it coming. Your life changes from one minute to the next. And then you have to redefine who you are, what your future is about, what your identity is, and not only your future, but also your past. Because one of the features in wife abandonment syndrome is that the husband he not only walks away, and in 90% of the cases there's another woman, there's an affair, but he then sort of diminishes the whole marriage and tells the wife, no, I was never happy. Even those times you thought I was happy, I was never happy. And he blames the wife, and she is totally bewildered. She's like, I can't, I didn't know anything about that. That time we went to California and he said he had such a bad time, and I thought we were having a great time.
Before we continue on, we want to tell you about today's sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Dipsea. Sometimes doing less can lead to so much more. Dipsea Stories believes in less analyzing and more feeling your feelings, less stressing and more easing into things, less scrolling and more savoring the moment, less pressure and more pleasure. Get into the mode of less is more by enjoying a nice and sexy pause from your day-to-day life with Dipsea Stories, an app full of sexy audio stories. Close your eyes and let yourself get lost in a world where only good things happen and pleasure is your only priority. A fun and relaxed way to explore your fantasies in a safe, shame-free way. They also have wellness sessions to help you wind down and explore. And once you're ready to drift off, they even have sleep sessions. For listeners of our show, Dipsea is offering an extended 30-day free trial when you go to dipseastories.com/ido. That's 30 days of full access for free when you go to Dipsea, DIPSEA stories.com/ido. Dipseastories.com/ido. Has your sex life fallen into the same old dull routine? Are you looking to shake things up a bit? Well, we're excited to share a fun and sexy solution to break those boring habits, a gift box from Like a Kitten. Like a Kitten will ship you a sexy gift box with all your erotic essentials from vibrators and massage oils to robes and handcuffs. It's your one-stop shop for a perfect evening. And guess what? This month, it's BYOB. Build your own box. Choose your own adventure by picking one item out of each of their 6 categories, from toys, beauty products, lubes and cleansers, games, sexy accessories, and lingerie. I love this BYOB option because you can build an amazing experience that's customized to your specific desires. And it's also worth mentioning that this entire box of 6 gifts is a complete steal. The box only costs $79, and some of the vibrators alone retail for that same price. And the best part, my favorite part, is that a portion of the sales goes to charities that focus on women's empowerment, education, and health. So you can feel good about feeling good. Right now, Like a Kitten is offering our listeners 20% off and free shipping when you go to likeakitten.com/ido or enter the code IDO at checkout. Just go to likeakitten.com/ido or use the code IDO to get 20% off these incredible boxes. Likeakitten.com/ido, and the link is also in the podcast episode description.
So the important thing is that that people don't really understand the traumatic nature of this kind of separation and divorce, and that it takes longer than a typical divorce. So that if a woman is still really in bad shape after a year, that's not unusual. And I would say it takes 1.5 years or 2 years for her to really get her feet back on the ground and feel as though she can be living her life, living her new life. And starting to create, new patterns and stop feeling so badly. So it's a long process, and part of the need for women who are going through this is to understand that it is going to take a long time, and it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with her, and that even if a therapist doesn't really understand, that she needs a longer period of time to catch her breath and regain her new life. It's not necessarily a pathological problem. And so that's why I created this community, the Runaway Husbands community, where we have workshops and we have therapy groups and we have a Facebook group so that the women can be in touch with other women sort of any hour of the day or night, because we have people all over the world when they're going through a hard time.
How do you guide these women in adjusting to the shock and the trauma, those initial weeks and months? What are some of the big pain points, and how can someone get through that more easily?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, pain points is the right word. And it's sort of the early weeks and months. It's just a matter of getting up every morning and putting one foot in front of the other, and just keep going. For the women who have a job, they're luckier because at least they can distract themselves for 8 hours a day. For those women who were stay-at-home moms or who were retired and don't have a place to go to during the day and are just sort of locked in the house with their own thoughts, not to mention a pandemic, but locked in the house with their own thoughts, it's harder. But it's very important to take care of oneself, to eat, to try to exercise is very helpful, to use the help of family and friends, to hopefully get a therapist who you can rely on, but also to recognize that you're not always going to feel this wretched, that it's temporary, that it's a necessary stage, and that you just have to keep going, and you will stop obsessing, you will stop feeling so badly, and little by little, my hope for the women in our community is that they can learn how to take this crisis of abandonment and turn it into an opportunity for growth and change. So my basic message, to anyone going through this particular crisis or any crisis, is that crisis is also opportunity. It sort of shakes you free of your old patterns, forces you to look at your life. And in an ideal situation, you have the courage to try to build from this period of disorganization that happens as a result of a crisis. So for many of the women in our community, it's given them an opportunity to go back to school or to take up a new pursuit or to do something that they'd never done before, or maybe that their husband might have disapproved of. They have to learn how to handle their finances if they didn't do that before, mow the lawn, buy a car, develop some kind of independence that maybe they didn't have when they were married, and that will help them feel good about themselves as they move forward in recovery.
During the stages of grief, and we actually recorded a show about grieving a breakup, and we very much go through stages of grief as if we had lost someone, because we have. And I want to honor the fact that this is different, as you have mentioned. But I imagine people early on are feeling these stages, and there's bargaining and there's questioning, why me, and rumination. What would you tell someone who, I know you said one foot in front of the other and reaching out to this community? Is there any practical things, like very actionable steps to maybe changing their thinking if they're really stuck in this why me, why did he do that rumination? What would you tell someone that's in that area or just feeling really, really stuck?
Yeah, I mean, that's a sort of a normative phase in the beginning, is that stuck feeling. And in terms of actions, I believe that we can get a lot of help if we're going to, sort of read the literature about grief recovery, like the book, The Dark Night of the Soul, or When Things Fall Apart. If we're going to listen to podcasts, or maybe like your own, or like Insight Timer or Calm meditations that are there to help you, to help you remember that even though you're in the present moment, and you're very, very wrapped up in the present moment, that time continues and that there'll be a future. If you have any connection to any kind of religious community, can be a very helpful thing to get involved in a religious community. And maybe to join, if it's possible for you, to join something like what I did, which is I joined a woman's barbershop chorus. And believe me, Chase, I have the worst voice in the world, but they let me in. They were very kind. But going every week and singing with other women, and having to learn the repertoire so that night after night, rather than sitting alone listening to the clock tick, I had to memorize my part. Doing something like that required some involvement was also very therapeutic. Even if you're not a gym person, if you could do some kind of exercise, Zumba or have something to try to fill up your calendar during the week, so that you're going to go to yoga class, or you're going to go swimming, or you're going to take a walk with a friend. And then also the other thing that I did, which I recommend, is that when I would go out to dinner with a friend or with a couple, I would read the newspaper first and have something to talk about other than my own misery. Because I know that not everybody wants to only hear about that. And although in the beginning with my very close friends, there's no way I could have avoided talking about it, that's normal, but that you want to try to be sensitive to not totally, wear your friends out with all of the suffering that you're going through. And the other pain point for a lot of people is children. If you have young children and you have to co-parent with your former spouse, and particularly if he's living with the affair partner, that's rough. That's a hard thing to send your kids over there. And that takes a lot of courage and a lot of self-control to not try to poison your children. Or if you have adult children, to try to understand it from their point of view, that they may want to keep their relationship with their father, and that you might not want to bring them in as your ally, and expect them to turn against their father, because that might not be healthy for them. So there's a lot of complex issues that develop as a result of this kind of divorce. But basically, if you can take the high road and try to develop yourself as an individual, you're going to come out better off in the end.
How does someone work towards forgiveness? Because I imagine it's going to be a lot of anger, just a lot of pain. And ultimately, if we can learn to forgive, it'll help release a lot of that anger. Am I on to something there? And if so, how can someone work towards that?
Yeah. I mean, the women in my community often talk about forgiveness in this context. I'll never forgive him. That's what they say. And although they may feel as though they should forgive, many of the women feel as though the level of betrayal and the kind of sort of cold-hearted hurt that he's inflicted on her makes it very, very hard for them to forgive. So first of all, they have to forgive themselves, because very often they blame themselves. If I were more attentive, if I were more sexy, if I were more something different than what I am, if I wasn't getting older, if I didn't put on all that weight, they blame themselves for the breakdown of the marriage. And if they're going to forgive, forgiveness happens a whole lot later. But it's really not something that people in our community focus on a lot, because it feels sort of out of touch because of the amount of hurt that they've experienced.
That makes sense. So what are some of the things that the people in your community focus on?
Well, there are different stages. So in the early stages, the first months or year, they're focusing on staying alive, keep going, go to work, and don't drink too much, don't overeat, don't get involved with drugs, and really try to be healthy and take care of yourself. But then after that, it comes to figuring out how you can be comfortable in your skin as a single woman. That it's nice to have a partner, it's nice to have a companion, but if you don't, that you can be proud of yourself and that you can enjoy your life as a single woman. A lot of women feel like it's humiliating, it's embarrassing, that at my age, whatever their age is, that I'm single. They never imagined that would be them. And there's a point of pride at being married, and having your family and maybe your children or grandchildren, and sharing it with a husband. But if that's not available to you, you have to learn how to love yourself, and to really work on that self-love, self-forgiveness, and to recognize that life is beautiful and precious, even if it hasn't turned out the way you imagined that it would when you were younger. So that's really the kind of growth that would make all of the suffering more meaningful, is to really have that love and appreciation for life. And I often show a video called The Lady in Number 6 about Alice Summers, who was the oldest living Holocaust survivor when she died at 109. And in the video, one of the women says that, when you've been through such hard times as they had been through, in the Holocaust, she said, you realize that very few things are important in life. And she said, number one is life itself. And number two is relationships, any kind of relationships. And she said, and everything else you can do without. I would throw health in there also, but, that appreciation for life itself, and that appreciation for relationships, and not only a love relationship, but relatives, friends, children, grandchildren, brothers, sisters, parents, they're all precious. And if we can develop that love of life, then we're doing well.
What are some tips you can give for developing more self-love?
I think that you have to really sit down and think about your life, but you also have to surround yourself with positive people. You have to choose a community of people who are going to lift you up, and you have to avoid those bitter people who are going to be, bringing you down. So that is very, very important. That's what I've tried to develop with the Runaway Husbands community, that it's not going to be a place for a bunch of women to complain about how awful men are or how awful their husbands are, although, there's plenty of that in it, but that there's really lots of room for people to talk about the strategies that they've used, in order to better themselves. So, really, Chase, I think that one of the most important things is to choose your community wisely and to look for people who are going to provide you with that positive viewpoint in life.
Before we continue on, we're going to take a short break to tell you about our sponsors. I don't know about you, but I love receiving massages. I think most people do, but not every partner loves giving them or is great at making them a sensual experience. So learn to unlock the secrets of the art of massage and improve your intimacy by gifting yourself or your partner with Beducated. Beducated is an online platform with an expert-backed library of courses from Tantra to kink, allowing you to explore new practices and upgrade your lovemaking skills. Beducated believes that sexual happiness is trainable, and their easy-to-follow video, audio, and written guides provide techniques and information to level up your love life. So on your next date night, take a deep dive into one of their courses and make it an extra special night. I personally love the tips and tricks from the sensual massage course, and I know you guys will too. With a Beducated subscription, you can have unlimited access to all of their online courses, tips, and world-renowned educators, new content every week, and more. So here's a hot tip. You can get 65% off Beducated's yearly pass with our code IDO. Just go to beducated.com and use our coupon code IDO. Plus, your 65% off will be locked in for life. That's Beducated, BEDUCATED.com, and use the code IDO. The link is in the episode description. If you're like me, you don't have time to get bogged down by your period. After years of frustrating period care products, I was pleasantly surprised to finally discover a comfortable product that lasts the whole day without leaks, and it's eco-friendly. It's called Flex. And now you can have an easy to use, body safe period product that looks out for your body, your lifestyle, and the planet. They have 2 awesome products to choose from. First is the Flex Disc, a single-use menstrual disc that can be worn for up to 12 hours and even holds as much flow as 3 super tampons. It's not a cup. It's like any other period product you've seen before. It pinches to be about the size of a tampon, and once it's in place, it warms up and forms to your unique anatomy to prevent leaks and prioritize comfort. And get this, it's so comfortable that you can't even feel it. It can help reduce cramps, and you can wear it for a mess-free period sex, which is pretty cool. While the Flex Disc creates 60% less waste compared to traditional products, if you want to go to zero waste and have the planet love you even more, then you should pick up their Flex Cup, which is their reusable menstrual cup. It's an absolute game changer. It's the only cup on the market that removes like a tampon, so you already know how to use it. One Flex Cup lasts for years, so it's not only good for the planet, but it's great for your wallet too. So say goodbye to cramps, put sex back on the table, and lend Mother Nature a hand. With Flex, you can do it all. Go to flexfits.com/IDO and use the code IDO for 20% off Flex Disc starter kits or 10% off your first Flex Cup plus free U.S. shipping. That's code IDO to save on Flex at fits.com/IDO.
As someone continues to move forward, we've covered a lot in the initial phase and in the first year. What's next? Like, how do they enter into another relationship? Surely there's going to be trust issues in things like that. Well, I don't want to assume, but maybe that's an issue going into future relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge issue. And a lot of people say, I don't ever want to get into another relationship because I don't ever want to be hurt like this again. But what I tell the women is, first of all, you're never going to be hurt like this again. Because for most of the women in this community, they've been married for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And they're not going to have that first initial marriage where they're building their lives together. Those days are gone. So any subsequent relationship that they're going to have is going to be of a different nature. So it's not like that thing where you're having your children and you're buying your first home together and you're building your career. Definitely there are younger women in our community, but that first significant relationship has passed. And in the second relationship, you're going to know that there are no guarantees. So that if it should end, it's not going to come as a kind of shock that first relationship, the ending of that first relationship was. Because you're aware of the fact that relationships don't necessarily last forever. So you're not going to be hurt in the same kind of way, even if the relationship should end. But the other thing I say to people about trust is that wouldn't you rather be the kind of person who trusts people and who trusts again, and maybe with any kind of trust, you open yourself up to risk, and maybe becomes disappointed in a subsequent relationship, rather than be the kind of person who doesn't trust anybody and doesn't open the door at all and doesn't let anybody in and is behind that brick wall and doesn't have the possibility of having perhaps a beautiful relationship, a very satisfying relationship, a different kind of mature relationship. And so I think that you'd find more happiness in life if you get yourself to trust again, but recognizing that it's different than the first time around. I have a lot to say, and we don't have the time today on how to trust again and how to date again and what to think about in dating. But maybe the short thing that I would have to say is keep your expectations really low. If you're dating, you're not looking for the man of your dreams. You're looking for a nice person to go and have a dinner with and maybe go to a movie with, and get to know somebody and take it really, really slow. Because the idea of falling madly in love again is not necessarily a great idea. You'd rather make a friend and get to know somebody and slowly build a relationship over time, with very, very low expectations. So it definitely is possible for people to, even if they've been so terribly hurt, to love again and trust again and have a beautiful connection with somebody after all of this has happened, because it's a new chapter in your life and you want to make this a beautiful chapter. It's not like your life is over. It's not. You have a future. It's in your hands, and construct it the way you want it to be. Go after what you want in life. That would be my advice.
We've covered a lot in this very broad topic. Are there any things that you want to emphasize or any stages that we skipped over?
We sure have covered a lot. And I think that, that you've helped me get the point across, which I think came through loud and clear, which is that hard things happen in life. We have to rise ourselves up. We have to work hard to not let ourselves become bitter, or resentful, or hateful. That's not what we're going to let ourselves be. We need to keep our vision on the future and recognize that the pain is going to pass, and that your beliefs that there is no happiness, I can never be happy again, is just a belief. It's not a fact. And so you can work, if you keep your mind open and you keep that positive approach, you can work on building a surprising next chapter in your life.
Well, thank you, Vikki. That's a very positive message that we can leave our listeners with. And I want you to tell our listeners where they can find out more about your work, how they can join the community, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay, perfect. So my book is called Runaway Husbands. Isn't that a great title? Runaway Husbands. And our website is www.runawayhusbands.com. So if anyone is interested, you can go check out our website. We have a lot going on throughout the year. We have all different events. Some are free, some are very low cost. I would start with getting the book, going to the website, and we want to extend a hand and help anyone who's been going through this.
Well, thank you, Vikki. I think it's so important, and that those of you listening this far, you're not alone in the work you're doing. I really encourage you to check out Vikki's stuff and join the community. I know it's got to be incredibly valuable. So thank you for that and for sharing all the information with our listeners today.
Thank you so much, Chase. I really appreciate it. And I'm really delighted to be able to explain about the Runaway Husbands work and how we can help women.
As always, thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. As always, all the links to the guest, as well as any of their recommendations, will be in the show notes page. You can find the link to that in the episode description or by going to idopodcast.com. Click on the podcast tab up at the top and you will have access to all the episodes that we've ever done. There are over 300 of them. And while you're on our website, if you haven't checked out our free 14-day Happy Couple Challenge, we really hope you do. It's a free email challenge that we send to you. It's 14 days of fun, easy, doable challenges to help strengthen and improve your relationship. And if you're looking for something that provides a little more help with working on your relationship, whether it's improving intimacy or communication with your partner, or just bringing the spark back, we would love for you guys to check out our online course, Spark My Relationship. We're offering $100 off to all of our listeners if you go to sparkmyrelationship.com/unlock. We've worked with over 15 psychologists and therapists to create the real life tools and strategies that they are teaching their clients. So we wanted to give them to you. It's a self-paced online course that can be done in as little as a month or up to 3 months. You can really decide how much or how little you want to do with your partner, or maybe just yourself. So we hope you guys check that out. It's sparkmyrelationship.com/unlock. Have a great day.